anybody who writes lyrics, leave the musical side out of it, because the music is more or less abstract, isn't it? But anybody who writes lyrics or poetry, which lyrics are, is necessarily going to involve themselves in the nitty-gritty of what's going on, because you can't use words without that happening. Every time you say anything, it comes with all the baggage that the words come with. So yeah, you inevitably end up. I think you reveal a lot. Anybody who writes lyrics reveals a lot about the way they think about the world, if that's the kind of lyric they're writing. If you're writing, if you're writing about how much you want to shag women, then probably not. You're probably not sort of making any statement. You're not making any statements about things. But if you're dealing with the things that interest you in your lyric writing, then you are dealing with the world, and that's the great thing about it. Of course, that's what I was saying earlier. That's what we've got. We've got, whether our lyrics are good or bad or indifferent, it doesn't really matter. We've got the obligation to write about things that interest us, that horrify us, that delight us, in a way that makes it accessible to people and doesn't sort of bludgeon people into submission. There are lyricists who do that. A lot of rap is like that. It's very much in your face. It's confrontational. It's very much about my way or the highway sort of thing. But most of us who come from a more sort of classical literary sort of tradition will deal with it in a more poetic way that allows a wider range of interpretations. I think that's what Stephen Wilson does.
Yeah, I think you're right there too. It's like I think for him, I think the lyrics have become more important as time has gone on. I think for the majority of his early career, it was the music was more important than the lyrics, which that's the Dave Gilmour, Richard Wright stance on Pink Floyd, and I agree with that for the most part. That my music always takes precedence over the lyrics, But I do find if you are going to sing, you should make sure that the lyrics. I think there's some responsibility. I think to a lyricist that you don't want to. I don't know. I'm not sure. Not avoid offending people, but you want to put some care into it, not just to say whatever, because like Devin Townsend, one of my favorite musicians, obviously, he talks like he's famous originally for making extreme metal. Like his band called Strapping Young Lad made some of the most intense heavy metal I've ever heard, and he was singing about all sorts of fucked up shit. And like he had a song about raping somebody. He had a song about. And none of this stuff's real. Like Devin's a sweetheart, but he's going like, if I'm going to make a horrible sounding record, I want the lyrics to be horrible. I want it to be, and then he found that it attracted people that align with his lyrics. People are like, yeah, fucking raper, man. And he's like, whoa, what do you mean? No, no, you're horrible. You're a horrible human being and people should avoid you. That's what the song's about. So he found that he had to sing more true, because if he didn't start singing true, he started attracting people that he couldn't stand to be around. But that only applies to people that make songs that a lot of people listen to, right? Like you and I could literally probably break laws in our songs, nobody even notice, like literally commit crimes.
How would you? I suppose you could break the law, couldn't you? You could incite people to violence in your song, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. Or I don't know. I'm not sure. I remember one time, I don't know if this was a law-breaking thing or just morally unjust, but and I remember in grade 10 or 11, we got tasked with writing a story. We had to write a book in English class about anything. I forget what the criteria was. It was just like, write a story. And it had to be X amount of words. It had to be like a certain amount of pages. And I wrote and because at the time, my favorite author was Stephen King, right? So I had to write a horror story. And I wrote a song or a story that was somewhat inspired by Cujo. It was about a dog. But beyond that, it didn't evolve. It was a robot dog. It was sci-fi. It got really weird. But at the end of the story, the dog ends up killing my friend Drew in the story, and I included his name and everything. And I even mentioned at the end of the story, the story ends with a news report of you hearing about Drew dying in the news, and it mentioned the car he was driving when he died. It mentioned where he died, where he lived, and it was all true like that, except for him dying. He didn't actually die. But my English teacher, she tried to get me suspended over the story because she's like, you can't kill people. Like this guy's in our class. Like this guy's one of your classmates. You can't kill classmates in your stories. And I'm like, well, I didn't kill him. Like the robot dog killed him. And the fucked up thing is I didn't feel inclined to do this. I wrote the story. I had Drew proofread it, and Drew loved the story because he's also a Stephen King fan. So he was like, wow, this is really good. Can you like make me that guy that dies at the end? That'd be really cool. So I went from being an anonymous person, the fictitious person, to making it real on Drew's request. And I got in a lot of shit over that. And that made me, I've forever then, I've actually looked at books and stories differently. Like I feel like I can never now include someone's name, you know, like in a story or a song or whatever, because I don't want to be falsely accused of committing some sort of
because
moral injustice.
that falls into the category of, is it slander or is it, what is the...
It's like that.
One of them is written libel. There's libel and there's slander, and I can't remember. One of them is written and one of them is speech, and the written one is more difficult because it's there as a record for everybody to see. But I think that's actually right. I think it's one of the few things that you cannot do in writing is you cannot write about a living person and say things about them that are not true, or say you want them dead. So your teacher was probably, as far as I know, was probably right to point that out, but.
Oh yeah,
you wouldn't know, but I think that's probably right. Yeah, I think that's probably right that you can't say that about a living person. That's why a lot of the AI things are coming up against that, because you can do it with someone who's dead. Like you can do Frank Zappa's voice as much as you want, but somebody at some point is going to come up against it if they use Ian McKellen's voice or something like that. You know.